By focusing on the stories and individuals in the community most affected by the Coke deals, with Franklin, Gustavo, and Teddy's storylines serving as the parties engaged in the controversy. Through their characters, we are able to observe the potential driving forces behind individuals who choose to engage in illegal activity, as well as the consequences that result. The desire for respect and to safeguard those you love, as well as how sometimes ego and human nature blur the line between the two, are topics that Snowfall repeatedly returns to. Despite suffering more losses than they could have ever imagined as a result of their actions, Franklin, Teddy, and Gustavo are prepared to battle to the bitter end. We've all been carrying too much weight for a long time. It can't be for nothing, Franklin informs Gustavo. The day has finally come for Gustavo, Franklin, Teddy, the DEA, and the KGB. This list is growing long. To seal their fate, because each respective party's future depends on the impending drop between Teddy and the Colombians. This has been planned and prepared for weeks. Gustavo is trusted by both the DEA and the KGB to point them in the direction of proof that the CIA has been trafficking narcotics and weapons to support American political objectives. Franklin also requires Teddy's location in order to recover his lost money and exact his last act of retaliation. It makes sense that Franklin and Gustavo would be the last two people standing after the chaotic meeting with Teddy, Ruben, and the DEA, because the show concentrates on those who were used as pawns in the broader political game, particularly those who were on the ground pushing the drugs and weapons. They have been essential to one another's stories from the start. They have saved one another from death on numerous times and have developed into devoted allies in the game. They are more dependent on one another than ever now that time is running out and the drop date has come. Gustavo has been going through it, to say it mildly. He is losing his family while facing charges from 3 separate government agencies, one of which isn't even from the nation in which he currently resides. He has been searching for a way out the entire season, and Franklin has promised to provide one if he can only get him to Teddy. Naturally, the KGB and DEA also want to locate Teddy and have given Gustavo a way out. But which organization would you trust more? The government or Franklin? Gustavo puts his trust in Franklin, goes to Jerome's dinner, and takes the cash and passports. Franklin muses on how, despite everything he's been through, he's failed to safeguard the people he loves after fulfilling his end of the bargain with Gustavo. He has yet to ensure a secure future for Sissy, Veronique, and his unborn child. As a result of his actions, his relative died and Melanie lost her life to crack addiction. But Franklin has a strategy because he is as tactical and practical as a military commander. The fact that Louis is necessary to make it happen is the only drawback. It is intended for Louis to continue to cooperate with Teddy so that she will deliver Franklin to him. Till Gustavo arrives, they will permit Louis, Franklin, and Teddy to speak face-to-face before killing Teddy. They must beat Franklin to look like there was a fight to kidnap him in order to make it plausible. Although Scully is assisting, he leaves Louis handle the honors. The confrontation is therapeutic for both of them. Louis, who continues to hold Franklin responsible for everything, lashes out at him while crying, and Franklin adopts a masochistic attitude by encouraging her and possibly punching himself by taking the beating. Louis is finally freed from Scully, and they tied him up before placing him in the trunk where Teddy is waiting for the DEA. Gustavo must do his duties. The DEA agent in charge of the mission is suspicious of Gustavo due to his frantic demeanor and growing silence. He points out that at this time, most people in Gustavo's situation typically start asking questions about the next steps in their safety. Gustavo obviously doesn't have to think about any of that since he's using Franklin's resources to escape after everything is said and done. They dispatch Amanda, another DEA agent, along with Gustavo for the drop due to their suspicions. Despite the fact that the exchange with the Colombians goes off without a hitch, Gustavo's flippant demeanor and inappropriate joke about Amanda working for the DEA raise even more red flags. In a heartbreaking scene, Gustavo bids Tayamura farewell earlier in the day while giving his nephews 2 of his luxury masks, indicating that he had plans distinct from those of the DEA. She reports back to her boss, and they decide to check in on Tayamura and discover that they've already gone. Gustavo gets bitten by this knowledge. To meet Teddy as scheduled, Tony goes with Gustavo. But when it becomes obvious that Teddy won't be there, they detain Gustavo. In order to carry out the plot and inform Teddy that they have Franklin, Gustavo pages Franklin to let him know he is on his way to Teddy before Gustavo is arrested. Teddy now veers from the course and instructs Louis to deliver Franklin alone and take off without waiting for Teddy to arrive. Franklin isn't too concerned because he will be okay as long as Gustavo shows up. regardless of whether Louis is there or not. Franklin is left at the building by Louis and Scully and is chained up there for several hours. Franklin panics when Teddy shows up and Gustavo is nowhere to be found because he knows he is exposed to a man who wants to end his life. In an unexpected turn of events, Ruben, who has been spying on Gustavo, intercepts and kills all of the officers as Gustavo is being detained by the DEA, releasing Gustavo. He yanks Gustavo out of the car and claims he's taking him to finish the mission because he knows Franklin is at the warehouse with Teddy. Teddy has Franklin balance on a metal trash can or else he will collapse and hang himself from the ceiling by the neck. As usual, Franklin makes a last-ditch effort to persuade himself out of it, but Teddy is unfazed. Teddy makes a poisonous mixture that will kill Franklin and a barrel of chemicals that will cause his corpse to disintegrate. Before he can infuse it, Gustavo and Ruben suddenly enter the room and chaos ensues. Franklin cries out to be free from his noose, but Ruben orders Gustavo to shackle Teddy to a forklift and doesn't listen to him. Ruben instructs Gustavo to bring him Teddy's secret weapon, but fights back, showing us what a great wrestler he is. Teddy believes Gustavo is still on his side as he turns his back on Ruben before at the last second freeing Franklin. Gustavo asks his buddy, "So what do you want to do?" as Teddy desperately tries to persuade him to remain on the CIA's side. Teddy in their possession, the dynamic pair is back on top. I am aware that she adhered to Franklin's strategy, but I don't have faith in Louis. Since she's still taking zero responsibility for her situation, I have a sneaking suspicion that once she wipes her hands of Teddy, she will shift her attention back to Franklin. She is not going to leave this situation peacefully. Congratulations to Jerome's actor Emin Joseph for directing this episode. When Teddy begs Parissa for advice on what to do next, I love the image of them both at the table. She is Teddy's moral compass, and I adore how they are a tiny square of light in a big dark frame. In relation to Jerome, they did a fantastic job of portraying a realistic funeral and reception, replete with a person sporting an airbrushed memorial t-shirt. Similar to real life, what started as a clandestine mission to combat communism quickly spiraled out of control, further alienating Teddy from the CIA, which doesn't want to be associated with what's occurred. Since he has never had an original idea in his life and is aware of how few options he has, he turns to Parissa for advice on what to do next. Teddy instead asks her to marry him when she pulls out the wedding ring he's been concealing. I have a strange feeling that Parissa might attempt to save Teddy. Veronique, it's very stressful to go into labor or experience contractions. While all of this is going on, there are only 2 more episodes, and I'm hoping for a healthy Saint child. It seems too early for delivery, but I don't know how far along she is. It was lovely to see Scully and Leon making up at the meal. They have the most beautiful narrative arcs of any of the Snowfall characters, in my opinion. There was a mention of a potential Snowfall spin-off featuring Wanda, Gail Bean, and I'm hoping that Scully and Leon will also appear in it.